Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. It's that time that we get together and lace up to keep on walking through the joys and struggles of life together. I was out last week with a head cold and coughing and all that mess, but I'm back in the saddle, and we are going to get back into our study on Nehemiah. Now, we'll hit and miss with it because with it being Easter season, we'll come back and get back and forth with it because we're definitely going to follow the leading of the Lord, whatever that might be. So let's just jump in. First, I want to say, though, if you want to contact me, you can reach me on here, on Messenger. You can reach me by email, kellylace@yahoo.com, KELLYLACE @yahoo.com. If I don't get back to you immediately, I'll get back as soon as I can. You can, as I said, you can message me on here. Let's stay connected. I love to pray with y'all about things. I love that we can hold each other's arms up, so to speak, right? Remember Moses in the battle, as long as he held his hands high, the word tells us, God told him, as long as you hold your hands high, you'll be winning. Well, he got so tired that he ended up having to have help. And two brothers came and held his arms up so that they could win the battle. Sometimes we need to hold each other's arms up. We need to be there for each other. We were not created to be islands off just all by ourselves. We need community. We need each other. So let's lace up together so that we can walk this thing out. Okay, I want to jump right back into the book of Nehemiah. We covered the book of Nehemiah is about the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. We know that the temple was rebuilt, and then God laid it by Ezra leading that charge. Then Nehemiah comes along. God lays it on his heart to go back to his home city of Jerusalem and begin to rebuild the walls. And he rallies the forces and they get going. Well, all through it, the enemies are coming against them. They're trying to stop the work of God. And y'all, that is life today. We do not read the Old Testament just as some ancient history lesson. The Word of God is alive. Every word of it is alive. The Word tells us, the Bible tells us that Jesus, the Word, became flesh and dwelt among us. He was in the beginning with God. He created with God. He created all that we see. Without him, nothing was created. Read the first chapter of John. The Word is alive, and it is valid and important, every bit of it, Old Testament all the way through to the end of the Revelation. So we're not going to just read this as a history lesson. We're going to take from this history lesson what can be applied to our lives today. So let's go there. I'm going to summarize. We're in chapter 6 now, so I'm going to summarize chapter 6 for you, and then we'll go back and touch on some points real quick. In verses 1 through 9, the wall is fully rebuilt. Hey, y'all, I see y'all on there. The wall is fully rebuilt, but the gates still need to be hung. So there are still open doors, okay? There's still areas that the enemy can get through. Well, the great enemies, the ones leading the charge against the work that God was doing, were two men called Sanballat and Tobiah. And they sent word to Nehemiah asking him, oh, please come down and see us. Come down and see us. We need to talk with you. We need to talk with you. And Nehemiah responds to them, I will not leave the work that God's called me to do. I will not leave this work to come down and have a conference with you. I'm going to make some points on that in a minute. 4 times they sent messages begging him to come down, to leave what he was doing and come down and confer with them. The 5th time they sent a letter saying that we know that you are going to try to set yourself up as king, and you're going to go against the king that is ruling, and you are, they had all this little scheme, and he just told him, you're making that up. You're making that up. That's not true. I will not leave what God has called me to do. Okay, and then it says, so he prayed. I love that. All through the book of Nehemiah, we read that he says, so I prayed. So I prayed. Over and over. That's our key, y'all. Stay in constant contact with our commander. Stay in constant contact with the one who knows the end from the beginning. Constant contact and communion with him. So in verses 10 through 14, Sanballat and Tobiah hire a Jew, one of his brothers, one of his comrades, to lure him and say, oh, there's someone coming out to kill you. They're after you. They're going to kill you. Come hide in the temple and let's bolt the door shut. Oh, and he's all doing his thing, right? Nehemiah goes, I'm not falling for that. I'm not falling for it. That's not God warning me. You see, God may give us caution, but God is not the author of fear. God is not the author of unholy quivering in your boots fear. We'll cover that again in a minute. So he said, I will not. No way. I will not. I will stand in my place, and I will do what God has called me to do. I will not abandon my post. He will stay, and he will not fall for their trickery. I want to read for you chapter 6, verse 13. It said, he was hired that I should be made afraid and do as he said and sin. Isn't that interesting? He is calling it point blank sin to give in to fear and to abandon his post because of fear. Read that again. Okay, I will. He was hired that I should be made afraid and do as he said and sin, and that they might have matter for an evil report with which to taunt and reproach me. See, the enemy, well, we'll go back into more of this in a minute, but the enemy that tries to lure you into sin, tantalize and draw you, or scare you, or whatever he can do to get you into sin, then will stand and taunt you for the very sin that he lured you into. He's wicked, he's evil, and he means no good. Don't fall for his trickery. Verses 15 and 16 says that the wall was completed in 52 days. Unbelievable. The whole land heard about it. The whole land knew this had to be God. For this to happen so quickly, this had to have been God. Verse 17 says that many people, excuse me, many people lived in subservience to Tobiah because of his status and his family connections. So many people were in constant contact with him, and they would run back to Nehemiah and they would tell Nehemiah all kinds of stuff that Tobiah said or did. And then whatever his response was, they'd go running back and they'd tell Tobiah whatever was said. Don't we see that? Don't we see that in life all the time? People that are coming and trying to get in they want to get in our good graces, and guess what I heard? And then as soon as you respond, they go running back, and sometimes they twist what you said. It is better to keep your mouth shut, sister and brother, let me tell you. Better to just keep your mouth shut. Okay. They had hired this guy to cause him to walk into fear and to run and hide so that they could taunt him. When he didn't fall for that, Tobiah began to send more and more letters. And the word says that he was trying to intimidate. Trying to intimidate. The very last line of chapter 6 says, Tobiah sent letters to frighten me. Now let's go back and break down this chapter a little bit. First thing that they try to do, Sanballat and Tobiah, scheming and just coming up with all kinds of plans to try to get this man off of course. The first thing they tried to do was they lured him. They come down here and meet with us. First thing I noticed about that was they were drawing him off of his post trying to draw him away from what God had called him to do. Brother, sister, I have seen it over and over, and the devil will even use other brothers and sisters to do it. When God's given you a job to do, when God has called you to do something, don't you let anything pull you off course. I know a precious sister, and she may end up watching this, who has had a beautiful ministry, reaching out to people, loving people, sharing the word. But because another sister went to her and told her, you're not sufficiently qualified for that. You need to just bake cakes and take food to people. That's your gift. How? I want to say, how dare she? It so discouraged this precious sister that for a while she stopped doing what God had called her to do, and she was miserable. Because God had a job for her to do, people for her to reach that I'll never reach, that you'll never reach. God had appointed her to these certain people. But even through another sister, a report was given to her, and she was lured off of her post, out of her calling. Y'all, we've got to be aware that, look who betrayed Jesus, one of his 12, one of his closest followers, Judas. The enemy will use anyone any way he can to keep us from following the call of God on our lives. And that may be something as simple as walking in obedience to the word in various areas, in walking in right standing with our family, whatever. Any area that the devil's trying to pull you off track, be wise, brothers and sisters, be wise. So number one, he was trying to get him off of his post and out of what he was supposed to be doing. Another thing I noticed, that they were trying to lure him not only off his post, but into their camp. I'll give you a little quick testimony here, a little personal testimony. Years ago, thank you, Jesus. I've grown since then, but 20 plus years ago, I was so well-meaning. I meant well, but I took on a role that was not mine to take. I was trying to help this sister in need. And I found myself spending money, well, this was longer ago than that, this was almost 30 years ago, spending money hand over fist, trying to help this sister, help. Nothing wrong with helping. Sounded like a good thing. Seemed like a good thing. But it wasn't something God had called me to. I was pulled away, and I was pulled into the enemy's camp. And I found myself stuck in a situation that could have been really bad. Well-meaning, good intentions, but y'all, we need to be wise, and we need to hear from the Lord. Don't just go, what he tells us, don't cast your pearls before swine. When God's given you resources or words, or words of encouragement, gifts, your giftings. You know, one of the gifts that I have is singing. Now, I could be lured and called, and I've been asked to sing in places that are not where I'm supposed to be, the enemy's camp. I've been asked to sing songs that seem innocent enough, but I know in my spirit, that's not a song I'm supposed to be singing. That's not what God's called me to do. Be careful with the gifts he's given you. Don't step into the enemy's camp. You be sure that you are walking out what God's called you to do. Next thing I noticed that they called for him 4 times. Persistent, constant, badgering. Come see us. Sometimes the enemy is like that little yapping dog that just won't shut up and will just keep on and on and on until you just feel like, okay, I'll just do it. No, let me tell you. Even if it's a brother or sister in the Lord, we have got to be bold enough to at some point turn and say, stop. Stop it. No. And no means no. No, I'm not going to do that. I've had to tell brothers and sisters, sometimes they get offended, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're wiser than that, but sometimes you just have to say, God has not called me to do that. So the answer is no. May not be anything wrong with it, but y'all, if I pick up and do something that I am not called to do, I am filling the place of someone that should be doing that. You're preventing them from getting their blessing because you're filling that gap. I told you before, I found out that I was not called to keep the nursery at church. That was not my calling. And when I was filling a spot like that, I was filling a spot of someone that was gifted and should have been in there doing it and receiving their blessing for it. So even if someone is persistent, sometimes we have to set that boundary and set it firmly in place and say no means no. Okay? So then they sent accusations. Now let me say something about this. I have been in so many situations where accusations come. Now, there was a day that when someone would falsely accuse me, it would devastate me. I would be like, I remember talking to my husband one day, and that's not true. Why would they say that about me? I did not say that. I did not do that. Why would they say that? So-and-so might believe that. And you know what? Those days are over for me, sister, brother, let me tell you. Those days are over. I will not defend myself against something that I did not do or say. I will not. I was recently, in the last couple of years, accused of saying some things, and a well-meaning sister came to me and was going to sit me down and call me on the carpet for it. Did you not say so-and-so and so-and-so? And I just looked at her and I said, no, I didn't. Okay, but now, did you not say so-and-so? No, I did not. And she said, you're telling me in front of God, right here, that you did not say. And I said, that is exactly what I'm telling you. Y'all, don't defend yourself when you don't have to do so. Don't stand up and, but no, I would never say something like that. That's just not my name. You know me better than that. Oh, please, quit all that mess. You know what I did? I said, Lord, you know these lies. You know the lies she's spreading. Vindicate me, Father. You said that you vindicate your own. You know that I am innocent in this case. Vindicate me. And he did. It was amazing. It was awesome. Okay, accusations will come. And he just said, you know what? That's a lie. You made it up. And I'm not falling for it. Now, here's the biggie. The enemy used a friend to try to trick him into falling into fear. Over and over in the NIV, it says to intimidate me. It was intended to intimidate me. Intimidation, by definition, is the act of inducing fear, attempting to force action or cease action by inducing fear. Intimidation is wicked, it is evil, and it is not from God. God does not intimidate to get you to walk with him. That is not how God operates. He tells us, in fact, I've read this. Now, I haven't counted them personally, but I have read that do not fear, fear not, have no fear. Yes, Kathy, he is our defense. Yes, well said. I have, like I said, 365 times in the Word of God it says, fear not or do not be afraid, or something to that effect. 365. One for every day of the year. Do you think it might be important that we not walk in fear? Do you think that holy boldness, now I'm not talking about bulldogging people, I'm not talking about running over people, I'm talking about simply walking in the boldness of holiness, knowing who you are in Him, knowing what your rights are in Him, knowing that He has got your back, that He is your healer, He is your deliverer, He is the lifter of your head. Let Him be that to you. Let Him be your defense. Let Him be your protector. Let Him be your rear guard, the Word tells us. Let Him be the one that has your back. Quit trying to always do it on your own, and do not give in to fear. Fear is the opposite of faith. Fear is the Hebrews 11:6 says that without faith it's impossible to please God. I want to be pleasing to God. I do not want to walk in fear. If you need or want to go into this further with me, kellylace@yahoo.com will go a little deeper into this. But faith is the one item that you see both on the gifts of the Spirit and the fruit of the Spirit. In Ephesians 2, and then again in Galatians 5, we read about the gifts and the fruits of the fruit of the Spirit. Faith. Faith is the opposite of fear. Faith is, by definition, let me read that. Faith, by definition, is trust and confidence even without proof. We know the scripture that says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is trust and confidence even without proof. I know that I know that I know my God has my back. I am His baby girl. And He knows that I run to Him sometimes saying, Daddy, I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm upset, I'm whatever, but I'm not going to walk in fear. Don't give in to it. Just a few of the nuggets that we can get out of one little chapter in Nehemiah. Just one little chapter. Don't step out of your calling and your place, whatever that might be. Walk in what God's called you to do, and don't let anything lure you away from it. Do not step into the enemy's turf, even for so-called good meaning. If God's called you to do something, that's different. You're still walking in your calling. I have a cousin actually who goes into the bars. He's a biker, but he's with the Lions of Judah, the tribe of Judah. And he will sit in the biker bars. He'll drink a Coke. And before long, he's leading someone to Jesus. Because God's called him to that. Todd Hennigan, God love you. Not my calling. I would be on the enemy's turf if I did that. I would not be walking in my calling. So don't get out of your calling. Don't go on the enemy's turf. Even if the enemy is badgering you and persistent, you need to at some point draw a line in the sand and say, stop here, come no further. Set your boundaries. Even if that means with certain people. You may have to say, I love you, but we're not going to discuss this again because I said no. Or, this is not your department, sister, brother. You need to step off on this. We need to, even if they're just persistent, set those boundaries. Don't defend yourself against accusations that you know are false and just lies. Just do like Nehemiah did. You made that up. Nope, it's not true. I will not stop doing what God's called me to do. Thank you very much. And number 5, do not give in to fear. Fear not, for I am with you. He says, if God is listen, if people could just see the forces of God that walk with us when we walk in our authority and we walk in boldness knowing that He has got us, would nobody mess with us. If they could only see. I've told you this story before, and I'll be quick, but I've told it before, but I'll tell it again. My daughter, when she was 5 years old, was going through a situation where she had to be around this certain lady. It was at her kindergarten, actually. And this lady she had just terrified my daughter over the course of a few days and several of the children. She was just a very unfriendly lady. But once Mama stepped in and Mama found out about it, Mama started handling up on it, and I started the ball rolling. in getting some things taken care of that needed to be taken care of. We walked into her class that next morning, and this lady came up and spoke very harshly and told her to go take her seat. And my daughter turned around and looked at me like, and I leaned down in her ear and I said, we know something she doesn't know. My little girl's shoulders went back. She turned around and said, good morning, and trotted off to her desk just happy as a clam. Let me tell you, when we know Father has our back, we don't need to walk in fear. If you don't know it, if you are not convinced of it, get in your word. Get in your word. Get to know him better. Because once you get to know him better, you'll know he's got you. He's got you. I love y'all. Let's lace up. Let's keep on walking. We've got joys. We've got struggles. We've got life to deal with. So we got to be laced up and ready to go. Love you bunches, and I'll see you next week.